discuss about ethics. So, yes, I mean, in yesterday's discussion also, we frequently use this particular term, ethics. So, what do we generally mean by this? So, we say that ethical concerns have to be addressed when we develop a particular technology, or we do even make a very, in our conversational context, we make judgments like that person is morally good, or that particular action from that person is morally acceptable. So morality and ethics. So, I mean, what do we have in our mind when we say that, or when we make such kind of a moral judgments? What is ethics or morality?
Morality comes from morals. Some morals is some lessons or even some rules what we have experienced or observed or perceived when we are living in a group or in a society. So how we have to behave, how we have to live, how we have to deal with others.
Okay. Yeah, so it has something to do with our behavior based on some rules. So I should do such and such thing in a given situation, or I ought to do such and such thing in a given situation. So, yeah, inevitably there will be a rule, and I'm expected to act in accordance with that rule. Right? So, here, now, we do often make moral judgments about others, right? Whether it is right or wrong. We do make moral judgments. So the question is based on what do we make such kind of moral judgments? To initiate the discussion, maybe, we can consider some possible some hypothetical scenario in which we are required to make some moral judgments, and based on that we guide our actions. So let us consider some of the trolley scenarios. So trolley scenarios are, if you look at any of the lectures in the ethics, many of them use these trolley scenarios to begin the discussion about ethics. So let us consider some trolley scenarios here, which you would be already aware of. So let us see how in such kind of scenario how we make moral judgments or analyzing our intuitions about the situation. So let us consider first one of the versions of choice. So you need to assume that you are the protagonist in that particular possible scenario, and see how you would make your moral decisions based on certain moral reasoning. So So let us assume that, let me assume that I am a trolley car driver. And I am driving the trolley car, let's say, at some speed. And as I move ahead, I find some five workers are working on the track. 5 persons are working on the track. Now, somehow I find that my brakes are not working. The brakes of the trolley car is not working. And the horn doesn't work. And there is no way that I can convey this to those persons who is there in the track. So I'm sure that if I move ahead, I will hit all of them and they will die. That's the situation here. Now suddenly I see a side track. Let's say a side track. And if I take the side track, I can save those 5 persons. But the issue is that on the side track, there is 1 person. Now, there comes up a kind of dilemma here. Right? So if I move ahead, then I'm going to hit those 5 persons and all of them will die. And if I take the side track, I can save those 5 persons, but this person will die. Right? So also assume that the side track was not in use for many years, let us say. Now the question is, what would you do at that time? What kind of moral justification would you give at that particular, when you decide to do something? So the question is, what would you do? Would you take the side track to save those 5 persons, or would you just go ahead and hit those 5 persons, thinking that this person, he was just standing on that particular side track because that was not in use for many years. So what would you do, and what's the reason for what would you do?
Consider corporate and all, you have to follow set of rules, which is given. I'm working in some company, and they have made some setup, you have to follow that. If, for example, if the computer is failed, I'm not a mechanic, so
Okay.
I have to read the tickets and things. So if they have mentioned that we have to go to this particular campus, so I have to follow it.
You have to.
I have to follow it.
Okay. Last part I didn't get. Right.
For example, if it's a set of rules say that I have to travel in this particular path,
Okay.
then I have to follow that one, even though whatever scenario it is.
Okay. So it's like even if it is going to hit those 5 persons, I'm expected to travel further. Okay? And this 1 person shouldn't be affected because of that particular scenario. Right? So, but you are hitting the 5 persons.
So both are painful decisions.
Yes.
We assume this is right and we take a decision. Killing 1 person is also wrong, killing 5 persons is also wrong. But it depends upon the situation. So if we think objectively, 5 persons will be saved, 1 person will be dead, that's how people make accidents and happens. Same thing, if that 1 person is a prime minister, 5 persons will go and die to protect that 1 person. Even in army, we have seen in Kargil and all, the leader, the general or somebody has to be saved in that gunfire. So the soldiers will go and create a shield and he escapes and those 5 people get killed.
Okay. So let's also assume that the moral, social status of those people who is involved in this more or less same. So,
So that's what is to say what is it depends upon the situation and they trade off.
hmm,
Trade off what is the benefit for somebody, benefit for us.
okay.
So,
So if
their
we-
ethical is always in a dilemma. They
Dilemma, but still the person has to
take a
take
decision.
decision.
He looks for a trade off.
So what would be the trade-off here?
So kill that one person and save 5% objectively.
Oh.
If it is a prime minister, Donald Trump was there. So the 3 people got died, 1 person got shot.
Yeah,
Right.
but so one thing is, let's assume that they have the moral equal status.
Equal, yeah, less 1 person.
That doesn't mean that if there is higher moral status or higher social status, then that gives them some advantage, like they can be saved, or that doesn't look good also. But before getting into that kind of discussions, if we assume.
No, but what if it's prime minister or like whoever on one side and the other side are your family members? Would you still?
Yeah, when he is a soldier or he is a security personnel, he has no. So he's been trained hard and hit. They will hit all those.
No,
security.
no.
You are a security guard. So you are giving security to the prime minister. So 5 people are there. They will go and cover him and they'll take the shots.
If you are the security, you will do the same.
Yeah. Yes, they are supposed to do. They keep testing the loyalty of the security fellow with all types of experiments, and once they are found that to be excellent, then only they will depute him to such a post. Somebody they will not send. Even when Rajiv Gandhi died, I think there were some security people who got died.
So the thing is, like, if we change the, roles of these people, then it might get into, the discussion might take into different direction, which is good also. But at this moment, it's like, all of them are more or less same, like, yeah. So I think in that situation, I guess you would save those 5%.
No. That's what. If they are social status same, I will save those 5%, 1% die.
Okay. So any other response? I think yours is different in the sense like, because the other person who is there in the side track is somehow not is uninvolved in the entire scenario, because he's standing on a track which was not at all in use for many years, and there is no way that this particular trolley would take that side track. That was the assumption he would have made. So that's the reason for you to take the side track, hit the one person, but which would eventually save those 5%. Any other response? So what do you say?
I would say saving 1% morally is correct because he's on the right track. Here, number doesn't come into picture. All are human beings, and each one of them has a equal life, meaning of the life. But the question comes is these 5 are standing on the road, which is not a right thing. So your number doesn't come into picture. So I would prefer to save the one who's standing on the right side or side lane.
Okay. Yeah. So somehow the number doesn't matter. That's what you wanted to say. Like when we make a particular moral judgment, it's not that we should consider what benefit whom. Rather, we ought to do certain things, because irrespective of what benefit the people are going to So now the question is, who will go for a side track, saying the 5 persons? And most of them would go for the side track, saving those 5 persons, right? And how many of you would go for, go straight and hit those? Yeah, okay. So the majority is, they want to take the side track. The 5, because what would be the moral reason? It's like more or less it would be something like this: so more people are getting benefited from my action. More people are getting benefited. So okay, so now we'll consider different. We'll make slight changes within this possible situation. Now, you are not a trolley car driver. The situation remains the same. You are an onlooker. So you are standing on a bridge, and you can just see whatever is happening down. So there are 5 persons working on the track, and the trolley car is coming. This is exactly the same situation. Somehow you come to know that the brakes don't work, the horn doesn't work. There is no way that whoever is driving the trolley car can convey this to those persons who is working on the track. Right? And you are helpless. You can't just do anything. Right? Now, if that's the situation, suddenly, you find that there's a very healthy person, right? And you're sure that if you push this healthy person to the track, it will stop the oncoming trolley car. You can save those 5 persons. So the scenario, the situation is slightly extreme here. So now, what were the options we had remains the same, that saving 5 persons while killing 1, or saving 1 person while killing 5. So the options remain the same, but the situation is changed. Instead of me being the trolley car driver, someone else is the trolley car driver. Only thing is that I'm just standing somewhere else and I can see whatever is happening there. And if I intervene, I can just save those 5 persons. But my intervention would end up in killing just 1 person. What would we do at that particular point of time? Now,
Killing 1 person.
killing 1 person.
One person is himself.
1 person?
Is himself.
Look myself.
The onlooker will be one
It's
person.
pushing someone.
one who is standing beside me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the onlooker pushes that person.
Yes, so I am the onlooker. So you can assume that you are the onlooker, so that you can assess your moral intuition. Yeah. So would you push the? So you will go ahead and push the 1 person and save those 5 persons.
Decision has to be taken.
Okay, so what would be your reasoning for that?
Now, we have to say that 5 people who have been working there.
Okay, so number matters. So, would you last time you said like you'll take the but anyway, it's not going
I'm
to
not a
be-
part of that. I think so. I'm just a
You'll restrain yourself from doing anything.
I mean, I can shout out like, go away from the track.
It's not possible. Like nothing else is possible. That's how the situation is kept.
My reasoning would be the 5 people know that it's dangerous to be there.
Yeah.
Why sacrifice innocent guy?
He's not
Who's
involved in
not even.
Okay. Okay. So similar kind of reason.
They might not know that the train may be coming, they are working on the track. They know about this time the train may come. Once the train is coming very close by, they can dispose of. That is also possible.
Also assume that why we need to make a lot of assumptions, because I mean the situation to
Since they are
not to make any.
Since they are working on that particular field only,
Yeah.
so we are just making an assumption that this can be happening. Because even mathematics also some of it, for example Gaussian, we assume that all the data are distributed evenly. That's the reason why we have that assumption only make the solutions. So similarly, this may be one of the assumptions since they are the part of that working community.
Okay. So
So
I mean.
there is a good possibility that they might have known this. That's the reason why they are working there.
So it's like you wouldn't. I mean.
I don't want to involve any other person.
Persons, yeah. Okay. So similar kind of reasoning you had before also.
Yes.
So you would also, yeah. So I mean, who would push the? You would push the healthy person. Yeah. Trying to be consistent with the previous moral reasoning. Right? The moral reasoning which he had the previous with regard to the previous scenario. Now, I mean, is there anyone who would like to push the
Onlooker. Onlooker.
Okay. Nobody, right? Oh, okay. You would prefer to push the. I mean, what would be your reasoning for that?
So obviously 5 is greater than 1, and yeah, that person might be innocent, but yeah, even in armies and militaries, innocent people give their lives to save larger number of lives. So yeah, if my first case was also the same answer, so I would definitely go with that answer.
Okay. So assume that you yourself is the person. I mean, who could jump onto the track and save who's.
Then it is even better than the first case. I would
Oh,
gladly give up
okay. So
without guilt.
Okay. So the reasoning would be like somehow the number matters. Right?
Yes, I mean, if 5% die, the grief will be greater rather than 1% dying. So yeah.
Okay. So you were trying to say something?
A number doesn't come into picture. It's a human. Like the person who is on the right side, their morality comes into picture here because since he's on the right track, you can't see number. Like 5 people are standing, so you need to kill the innocent one. Here we need to focus on saving the innocent one.
Okay. So
I personally feel I prefer to say the one person.
Okay.
Here not one person, the person is on the right side.
Okay, let us assume that, I mean, not a lot of assumptions, but I mean, just to see how you would respond. Assume that the healthy person is a very cruel one. Many would even benefit if you were to be, pushed onto the track. Would you do the same?
No.
Even then you would. Okay. So you would say that there is something is not right. Okay.
And we can't compare this situation
situation in the military. There it is like, that's entirely different.
Okay.
They are sacrificing a life for someone. Here no one is sacrificing life. It is our decision to whom to save.
Okay.
So when it comes to question of saving, when we have a two option, which is inevitable, we have to pick one option. In that, here we need to prefer the one who's on the right side or the safer side. When he feels he's on the safer side, like vehicle is moving on the right direction and he's not in the direction of the vehicle where he's moving. So we have to think in that direction.
Okay. 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 Anyone else? Any different reasoning?
If there is a cruel person, so I'll stick to the same one.
Oh, okay. Even if the person were to be cruel, you just
I'll stick to go over with that track. I'll choose the same track.
okay.
Because he may be the cruel person for society, but we don't know the background.
As
For
in
example,
you,
if
you
the
know-
person is hangman, he do the hanging to the criminals.
Oh.
Even though his outer core it may be a cruel, but he's killing the people, but still. I don't know the background scenario.
I assume that you know in and through about the person.
I know that he has a family to feed, so I wouldn't push him. So even if he's cruel, he is providing for his family.
Okay. So, but the issue is that other 5 persons also might be having the families.
Then I would need information as to why they are standing there. Is it sheer stupidity or
We have a limited data set.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. Now, in the first case, if you look at the first case, it's quite easier for us to say that, I need to save those 5 persons instead of that one person. So somehow it was not so difficult, or even it is easy for me to say that, to make that particular judgment, right? That I am going to take the side track because 5 persons are going to be affected. Right? There's no much difficulty. Somehow intuitively also it satisfies. If I were to take the side track, I can save more people. More people are getting benefited. Right? So that somehow the number comes in the picture. Right? But if we consider the second scenario, and if we are, and most of you accepted that with regard to the first scenario, that I am going to take the side track so that I can save more people. Now, if I strictly follow whatever moral reasoning that I had in the first scenario, in the second scenario, if I were to follow the same kind of moral reasoning, I should have pushed the healthy person to the side track, onto the track from the bridge. Right? And many of you, what we could see is that it wasn't so easy to say that. So the options remain the same, right? Saving 1 person or saving 5 persons. Less people are getting affected, more people are getting benefited. Right? Now, everything remains the same, but still, in the second scenario, the reasoning would be something like this: that even if I were to push the healthy person onto the track, right, even if it is going to benefit more people, still I just don't want to do that. Something like that. Right? There's something intrinsically unacceptable in pushing the healthy person onto the track. Right? Now, so that's a kind of, shows two different types of moral reason. Okay. Now let's move away from this role scenario and let's consider this doctor scenario. Okay. Now in this possible scenario, you are not a trolley car driver, but you are a doctor. So in the version 1, you are a doctor in an emergency room. Okay. So now 5 patients are approaching you. They are injured, but not so severely injured. Okay. And if you treat them, they will be safe. Now suddenly, one person comes in, another patient, and who is so much injured. And if you don't treat him, he will die. And the situation is like, if you treat these 5 persons, then this one person will die. And if you spend time for this one person, then the other 5 will die. So most of us would say that, as also assume that we don't have any background information about all those 5 persons. So most of us would say that, yeah, I need to save those 5 persons. I need to focus on those 5 persons rather than this one person. So, there's no much difficulty in making that particular judgment. Save those 5 persons instead of this one, because it's like more people are getting benefited from through my action. Now, we can again change the situation. It's like now the second version of the doctor scenario. You are not a doctor in an emergency room, but you are a doctor. But you are a transplant surgeon. Right? Now, there are 5 patients with you, and all of them need 5 different organs to survive. So let us say that one needs lung, the other one needs the pancreas, or the other one needs the kidney, so the other one needs a heart. Like that, these 5 different persons would need different organs to survive. And if the surgery doesn't happen, then all of them will die. Now, suddenly you find that there's a healthy person sitting in another room, and you can remove, make him unconscious and remove those different 5 organs and give it to these 5 persons and save these 5 persons. Now, would we do that? Okay. Yes. So it's not allowed, right? It's not allowed. In the sense, like there's something intrinsically wrong in performing that particular action. Right? There is something that is clearly unacceptable. Well, if I were to do that, then more people will be benefited, no doubt of it. Because 5 persons will be saved. Only 1 person will be suffering. Right? But there's some difficulty in accepting the kind of moral reasoning that I had in the previous scenario. Somehow the number matters, that more people have to be benefited. So through my actions, more people should more people should be happy. Right? But if I were to, in some sense, I am unable to apply the same moral reasoning in the second scenario. not only that, if I were to apply, I find myself as doing something that is morally unacceptable. Right? So there is something intrinsically wrong. So if you look at now in both possible scenarios, if you look at the second versions, I mean, the kind of moral reasoning that we have is this, that there's something intrinsically wrong. There's something really unacceptable, just not allowed to do such kind of things. Right? Whereas in the previous, I mean, if you consider the first versions of these scenarios, it is quite easy to say that, yeah, number matters. I mean, my action should, at the end of the day, result in making more people happy. Right? Quite easy to say that. Right? So now, if we, from this, if we look at these two different responses, right, to version 1 and version 2 of each scenarios, if you look at the two different responses of this to these scenarios, it represents two types of moral reasoning. So, let me show this. So, it indicates two ways of thinking about morality. So one is consequentialist moral reasoning. The other one is a categorical moral reasoning. Now, in consequentialist moral reasoning, the morality lies in the consequences of the action. So you have the action and perform the action and look at the results of the actions and then decide the morality of the action. So somehow the consequence will decide the morality of the action. So if you look at the first scenarios now, most of us, the kind of moral reasoning that we have, most of us have, is this, that pushing the, or taking the sidetrack, that's my action, and it is going to result in some good consequences. Some more people are going to get benefited through my action. So somehow the action is performed, and then in the external world, how the consequences are going to affect and going to be affected by my action. That is a consideration. Whereas, if you, I mean, that was the, that's how you can explain the kind of moral reasoning that we had in the first versions. As a doctor in an emergency room, I mean, I don't want to spend time for this one person. I want to save those 5 persons. And more people are going to get benefited because of that. So my action will result in some good consequences. So performing the action, then there are some consequences to these actions, and those consequences are going to decide the morality of the action. Whereas if we take the second kind of, look at the kind of responses that we had to second versions of each possible scenarios. Right? So many of us said, it's quite difficult to apply that same consequentialist kind of moral reasoning in the second scenarios. So somehow I mean, our response is like this. So there's something intrinsically wrong in pushing that healthy person onto the truck. There is something intrinsically wrong in removing the 5 different organs from one person and giving it to other 5 people. Of course, the results are going to be really excellent because more people are going to be benefited. Nonetheless, I just don't want to do that. I just don't simply, I say that it is morally unacceptable. Now if I were to say, I mean, the other way to say same thing is to say that, I mean, just categorically something is wrong with pushing the healthy person onto the track or removing the 5 different organs from one person to giving it to others. There is something categorically wrong. Something, I mean, irrespective of the results that the actions could have on others, irrespective of that, there's something intrinsically wrong in performing certain actions. There's something categorically wrong, right? So now, such kind of moral reasoning, known as categorical moral reasoning. Categorical moral reasoning. Okay. So, as it is mentioned there, categorical moral reasoning locates morality on the certain absolute moral principle or certain categorical duties and rights. So, I mean, irrespective of the benefits, irrespective of the results, irrespective of the consequences, okay, certain actions are intrinsically, categorically wrong. Right? So, these are the 2 different types of moral reasoning that we could consider. Now, to explain this further, any questions on this?
Just an observation that the second category you can also land in jail. That also would be a...
Okay, so I mean, my moral reasoning, if I were to say that, well, the only reason for me not to push the healthy person or to remove those 5 different organs from one person, the only reason for me is to is that I know that I will end up in a jail. There will be some legal consequences. So now, if I were to say that, then again, that becomes a consequential moral reason. Yes. If that's a reason that I have to not to do such kind of things, then yes, again, it's a consequential. But if I were to say that, I mean, it doesn't matter whether I go to jail or not. Okay. There's something intrinsically wrong, or something that is categorically unacceptable, then there is a categorical moral reason. Now, somehow this has to get connected to the speech things. So we will. So I think that part, the involvement from your side also is required. So, how to explain this further? So let us look at that. So what is happening here is like, I mean, this is a normative evidence. So if you look at the way we responded to those scenarios, I mean, our question was this, that what are the norms based on which I would make a moral judgment? Right? Or what are the conditions based on which I would make a moral judgment? That's a question. So that's called normative. So look at the term, that normative. So normative ethics provides norms of morality. So here, um, so for consequentialist, what is the norm? Consequences are the norms. You look at this is a rule. Look at the consequences of the action, then decide the morality of the action. Now, for one who accepts the categorical moral reasoning would, mostly they would have kind of reasoning of this sort, that if there are things that are intrinsically wrong, then those things are intrinsically wrong based on some intrinsic moral or absolute moral principles. So the categorical, one who accepts the categorical moral reasoning would end up in having some certain absolute moral principles. So again, they provide norms of morality. None of this, whether it is normative ethics or any other kind of ethics within this, they are not worried about providing rules. They don't prescribe rules. But it provides a reason why certain rules have to be accepted. So basically, these kinds of theories fall within a particular ethics called normative ethics. So if we consider ethics as a whole, again it can be categorized into ethics problems in different, three different areas, like meta-ethics, normative ethics, and applied ethics. So this one, whatever we have discussed, it falls within normative ethics. So what is the norm of morality? Someone would say that it's the consequences. Other might say that it is not the consequences that matter in deciding the morality of the actions, but it is the certain categorical rights or categorical principles. So this is called normative ethics. Right? Now, apart from normative ethics, we have meta-ethics. Right? So to indicate the difference, doesn't matter what moral principles are there, but if I were to ask the question like, is moral responsibility, can I attribute moral responsibility in a meaningful manner? Now this question becomes significant when, suppose if I were to be worried about questions like, is world deterministic or not? Now, if the situation is deterministic, then there's no point in saying that I am morally responsible for this. I'm just part of that deterministic world. So, is morality possible at the end of the day? Now, that's a different kind of question which falls within meta-ethics. So, it is about ethics. It is about ethical properties. Right? So, suppose if I were to say that, ask the question, now consider different moral judgments, like Mr. X is a good person, or that particular action from Mr. X is morally good or morally bad. Now, look at those statements. What kind of statements are those? Now, this is not a normative ethical question. It is purely a meta-ethical question. Right? Whereas, if I were to ask now, are certain things acceptable within developing a particular technology, then that becomes an applied ethical question. So, the kind of discussions that we had mostly falls within applied ethics, because it is concerned with a particular privacy or trust issue within a particular technology. Now, here, this type of ethics falls within normative ethics. So, Now, yeah, how this will get connected to some applied ethical questions that we must see. Now, to explain this further, let's see what is happening within consequentialist moral reasoning. So, the moral assessment of X is based on the effect of X. So, as we said, the moral assessment of a particular action depends on the effect that the action produces. So, I think this is straightforward. Now, this can again get into two different kinds of types of normative ethical principles. So if the action is useful, then it is morally good, right? Something like that. Now, the action being useful for whom? So an act being useful for myself, I can say that. So whatever is useful for me is morally acceptable. If I were to accept such kind of a moral reasoning, now that is known as some kind of ethical egoism. So selfish motives are given more priority there. So whatever is moral should satisfy my selfish motives. Different way to answer that question is to say that, an action, you see the consequences of the action and see how maximum number of the people are getting benefited out of it. Right? So that becomes utility. So if I were to say that an action is morally acceptable if it benefits maximum number of the people, then it becomes utilitarian. So in some sense it's altruistic, because not just me, but more people, or the maximum number of people are consideration when in the utility. So now, to do any of this, first we should have an idea about intrinsic good and instrumental, something instrumentally good. Yeah. So let us say something is intrinsically good if and only if that is good in itself. So X is good, intrinsically good, if it is good itself, not because that it is good because of something else. We'll see some of the examples here. Now, something is instrumentally good if it is good for because of something else. So now what is intrinsically good and what is instrumentally good might vary for these ethical frameworks. Right. So to explain morality further, and we need to first define or accept or see what is intrinsically good. Now, suppose, so could anyone think of an example for something that is intrinsically good and instrumentally good?
Honesty.
Honesty is instrumentally good or
No, intrinsically.
intrinsically good? Why do you say that it is intrinsically good?
Because it is intrinsically.
There is no other thing. You are being honest. You are being integrated to someone. There is no need for reason.
Okay, so what would be something that is instrumentally good?
Money.
Okay. Yeah, money is like, as far as it can be used.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, its goodness depends on whether it can be used or not. Right? Now, any other example? intrinsically good.
Intrinsically or instrumentally, thinking in that way is not correct.
Whether thinking intrinsically good or instrumentally good is not that. What my core principles, core ethics, which have been imbibed right from the birth. So if we work on those guidelines, so it's always intrinsically good and instrumentally good. So in goodness you cannot distinguish whether it is intrinsic or instrumental. So there will be line. So if we act as per our inbuilt principles, inbuilt guidelines, which are not something maybe taught by the parents, maybe teachers, maybe society. So these are evolved things. So once it is evolved, so there will be no line between intrinsically good or instrumentally good.
Okay.
That's my idea.
Okay. Yeah, I think this distinction is quite basic in that manner. In some sense, unless we accept this distinction, I think, because there's no way that that these two distinctions, that distinction has to be there. So, for example, now if we depend on the, how utilitarians would explain. Yeah, you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to say there is intrinsic and extrinsic. The difference is there because if I lie and then that lie is going to save somebody else's life, in that particular context, that lie becomes a good thing, right? Like if that would,
Why do you lie?
because that might save somebody's life. Let's say we are a Nazi regime and I'm hiding a Jew, and somebody like the police, the people come and then they ask, like, is there somebody there? I say no. So would you say is that a bad thing to say no there, to lie there?
In principle, I should not lie.
That's what, like in that situation, did I do something wrong?
Wrong right is not my.
No, I'm just asking you, I'm not asking you to define wrong, I'm just asking you, in that situation, would you say I did something wrong?
I should not take a decision whether it is right or wrong. I should follow the principles.
No, that's okay. Just like, so would you? So you would say? Would you say what I did there is wrong, or would you say it's valueless? It has no value.
If you lie, definitely it is wrong.
So if I lie, if I tell that the person, if I say okay, there is some person, and then the person get killed because of what I did, then what about that?
In that situation, if it is on the right side, if the scenario is on the right side, you can lie. There is no problem.
Yes. So that's how the instrumental value comes. It's not intrinsically. It's because in that situation, because of the consequences, it gets a value. So there is so you agree that there is instrumental goodness then.
Define properly this is intrinsic and this is instrumental. It depends on the situation.
Yeah, maybe it depends on the situation, but that distinction is still there. Situation in the sense like might vary. What is being considered as intrinsically good might be something that would be considered as intrinsically good by some other person. But there are certain things which are clearly intrinsic and which are clearly instrumentally good. So, in the case of money, just having the money, unless it leads to some other things, then it's useless. So, its goodness lies that in the sense that it is instrumental to something else.
Some medicines, some bitter medicines can be considered instrumentally to say good for health. Not tasty, but they are
Yeah, medicines, I mean, little medicines, yeah. Even if it were to be, one could say that even if it were to be sweet, still, I mean, it's good. It is in the sense that it is instrumental to, yeah, to address the kind of problems that I have. So that is instrumentally good in that sense. So it's not that unless, I mean, we are not seeking it, or we are not after any medicine unless we have any trouble. So now, actually, if we consider utilitarians, own example, we can still make sense of this distinction. So now, what utilitarians would say, that especially Jeremy Bentham, now he would say that happiness or pleasure is something that is intrinsically good. Now, the kind of reason that he would have is this, that you look at the kind of, what is the most significant consideration that you have prior to making any decision? So, prior to performing any particular action. Right? Now, whether that action is leading to happiness or pleasure, whether that particular action reduces the pain. So, this particular consideration is there. So, it doesn't make much sense to say that I prefer to perform certain actions that gives me pain. So mostly we seek pleasure and we try to avoid pain. So in some sense, pleasure is something that is intrinsically good for utilitarians. Pleasure. So we seek pleasure and avoid pain. So what he says is he regards them as sovereign masters, pain and pleasure. Right? Pain and pleasure. So sovereign masters in the sense that they determine my actions. Pain and pleasure say what action I should perform in that sense. Right? So now pleasure is something that is intrinsically good for a utilitarian. So everything else is sought for the sake of pleasure. Right? Everything else is sought for the sake of pleasure. Now, if we take the deontologists, then they would say that is something else that is intrinsically good. Okay, so we'll see that. So so is pleasure? So what is intrinsically good for a utilitarian? It's a pleasure. Everything else is instrumental. So I consider everything else in the sense that whether that leads to pleasure or not. So whether the performance of this particular action, whether that leads to happiness or not. This is what, that's how the pleasure becomes something that is intrinsically good. Does that make sense? So now, so how would a utilitarian explain the morality of the action? So an action is morally right if and only if that action maximizes the utility. Maximizes the utility. Now the question is, what is utility? Then one would say that utility is the balance of a pleasure or pain. So you try to reduce the pain and maximize the pleasure. So each one has this tendency. Yeah. So yes, so yeah, so what they have is a principle of utility, which is something like this: the greatest good for the greatest number. So what is moral is, so look at the kind of reasoning that we have. I mean, I should take the side track to save those 5%. So in some sense, given that situation, I am satisfying the requirement of a maximum number. So maximizing the utility. So my consequence of the action is that it is going to be useful for many people. So what is moral is nothing but what is going to satisfy more number of people. Right? So that is utilitarianism, but there are some problems with this kind of this way of thinking about morality. So easily one could say that, I mean, you can think of a situation where one small group of minorities is suffering for the sake of majority. Well, would that be morally acceptable or not? So, some extreme cases can be considered just to think, just to see whether this is morally acceptable or not. So, there is a story, this sort. So the one who walked away from Pomelas. So it's a story by Ursula Le Guin. What the story says is nothing but this, that in the city, okay, there's a city of Pomelas, and in the city there are, its prosperity of the city is simply dependent on the painful life of a child. Just assume that if the city has a cellar, and in the cellar a child is locked up, and she's having a very painful life. And if the child is is allowed to have a decent life, then the prosperity of the city comes down. Now, more people are happy because this just one person is suffering. Right? Now, is this morally acceptable? So, if we go by the utilitarianism of Dunlop's kind of utilitarianism, so an action is morally right if it maximizes the utility, if it brings maximum happiness for the maximum number of the people. Now, here is an action. The action is that the little child is allowed to undergo that painful life, right? But somehow, it's something like we are unable to say that it is morally acceptable, because like more people are really suffer because of, more people are getting benefited just because of this suffering of the one person. Now, is this acceptable? It satisfies the principle that an action is morally right if and only if that action maximizes the utility, if and only if that action is beneficial for maximum number of the people. So now the little child in the city of Pomelas, so it is having the child is having very painful life, and if you remove the, if she is allowed to have the decent life, then the prosperity of the city will come down. So what would be morally acceptable here? Is it, should we allow the little child to be in the painful life? But that goes against the utilitarian principle of this law, that an action is morally right if and only if that action is useful for maximum number of the people. So I think there is something wrong in accepting that. Right? There is something wrong in accepting that. Now we can consider a different case. So promise making, right? The act of promise making. Now when I make a promise, normally it is accepted that I should keep it. Right? Now, following Bentham's utilitarianism, I can say that in a given situation, if it is useful for many, then I can just break it. I can break the promise whatever I have made. So would that be acceptable in a given scenario? What would you say? So it's not very problematic. Like easily we can say that in a given scenario, because many are not getting affected. One might say that I can break the promise. Would we accept it? Would we accept that? There is some trouble in saying that, you ought to break the promises if it is required, being adopted in my common sense morality, because it has to do with the trust. Yeah, there is, in its this type of utilitarianism has some trouble. So it's like an action is morally right if and only if that action maximizes the utility, or if and only if that action brings maximum happiness for the maximum amount of people. Now, this has some problem. So that's quite visible in little child's case, right? So just for the sake of the benefit of more people, one person is suffering. Something is unacceptable thing, or breaking the promises. So I ought to break the promises whenever it is required, being adopted into my common sense morality. So there is something wrong in something counterintuitive in saying that. Right? So how to address this now? There's someone else called J.S. Mill. He revised this utilitarianism, and he said, like, we should maximize the utility, but we should see the utility in the long run. Right? So, and more importantly, we should never reconcile or compromise the individual rights of the other person. So what is happening in the case of little child, somehow the little child's fundamental right is violated. And we shouldn't do that. We should respect the individual rights or fundamental rights of other persons. And the reason to respect the other person's individual right or fundamental right is this, that in the long run it would maximize the utility. Right? So what happens with the promise making case that so I can have two rules. I ought to keep the promise. That's one rule. The other rule is I ought to break the promise if it is required. Now, the Bentham's kind of utilitarianism might say that, yeah, whenever it is required, you just break it because now the morality of the action simply depends on the fact that performance of a particular action, how that action is going to maximize the utility. Right? Now, when it comes to J.S. Mill, he would say, no, it's not so easy to get accepted. It's not so easy to accept this moral, this that I ought to break the promise whenever it is required. In our common sense morality, it is not so easy. Look at the situation. Now, suppose if we all had accepted this as a moral rule, I ought to break the promises whenever it is required, then in the long run, it is not going to maximize the utility because we will end up in some kind of a trust issue. We wouldn't be able to trust others whenever they make promises. That's the reason. So in the long run, well, it is not going to maximize the utility. So our focus should be on maximizing the utility in the long run. Okay. So now, therefore, some rules have to be introduced where the individual rights of the persons are not violated. So, so that's why the Mill's utilitarianism would accept some kind of a rule, would be known as some kind of rule. So they would say an action is morally right if and only if that action is consistent with a certain moral rule. And an acceptance of a moral rule is justified based on the utility that it produces. So rules have a specific status in a rule utilitarianism. So yeah. So what's the time?
10:20.
10.
Okay.
No. Okay. So now, yeah, just to recapitulate what we were doing till now. So we started off with those two possible scenarios, right? And in one, we could see that easily we could adopt certain kind of a moral reasoning known as consequentialism. In the second case, we could see that there's something called the categorical moral reasoning. So we'll see what is categorical moral reasoning. But when we what is consequentialism? What consequentialism says is this: should we break for some time? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So what the consequentialism would say, the morality lies in the consequence if it is good. So you look at the